To get us started, we're just going to share a little bit about what IndieGraph is for anyone who is new to our organization. We really see ourselves as the operating system for independent local media. Our focus here at IndieGraph is helping local media publishers defend their independence. So, what does that mean? We do this across four core pillars, which are activating diverse revenue streams, building trust-based audience relationships, enabling cross newsroom collaboration, and providing real people strategic support. We were founded in 2020 by local journalism innovators, and we consider ourselves a mission-driven technology and services company, and we are incorporated in both US and Canada. So who do we work with? We work with publishers in both English and Spanish with a focus on understanding and serving underserved and underrepresented communities. And we are also backed by a number of impact and tech funders, including the Knight Foundation, New Media Ventures, Corrales, and the Public Media Venture Group. So currently we serve over 180 plus local media organizations across the US, Canada, and Latin America. We serve all shapes, sizes, and types of established and revenue generating newsrooms and publishers, including digital media, traditional newspapers, local media networks, and public media organizations. And what we offer is a fully integrated system, which we call the IndieGraph OS, and standalone products that can also plug directly into your existing tech stack. And this year we've announced several really exciting acquisitions and partnerships, including Harkin, which is an engagement management system to help you tap into what's most important to your audience, as well as Indie Editor, which serves as an automated editing assistant to help you maintain editorial consistency. And most importantly, we are built by people who care. So our team, our ultimate goal is to act as genuine hands-on strategic thought partners to our publishers. And then I'll conclude this section by introducing a very exciting opportunity that we have going on right now, in which applications are still open. So our Tech for Journalism program is designed to provide independent publishers with access to our entire media operating system at a very steep discount. This was funded by a $5 million investment from the Knight Foundation, and the goal is to lower digital infrastructure costs so more money stays in the hands of newsrooms. So what's included in the program? You get full access to IndieGraph OS tech stack, which includes an integrated website, email platform, ads manager, and expert services. And then you receive, it's a graduated subsidy structure. So in year one, outlets will receive 70% off on tech products and a 50% off discount on IndieGraph expert services. In year two, that goes to 50% on all tech and expert services. And then by year three, it is our hope and goal that newsrooms will have been able to successfully diversify their revenue streams and grow their audience so that they will be able to graduate to full pricing supported by their diverse revenue streams. And next. So eligibility criteria, you must be based in the US. You have to operate either as a nonprofit local media organization, or you can be a for-profit serving underserved areas or communities. You must be producing original local content, either radio, TV, or digital media, and you have the capacity for collaboration, meaning that you're able to demonstrate commitment and time to this project in order to help you succeed within the program. So if you do have any more questions about this, please feel free to leave in the chat. We're happy to answer any questions. You can scan the QR code to apply, and we'll also be dropping a link in the chat to apply there, or if you want to learn more about the program. So after all that, I will pass it over to today's speaker, Laura Davis, to get the session started.
Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Davis, as Erica said. I'm IndieGraph's entrepreneur in residence for AI. I joined IndieGraph after they acquired my company called StyleBot, which is a built-in style guide that is now Indie Editor, which is available as part of IndieGraph OS. It helps build trust and credibility as part of your workflow. And I am also a journalism professor at USC Annenberg. Erica, you're still okay. So just to frame up, today's discussion, and just to give you a sense of how we're looking at AI strategy at IndieGraph, is that local newsrooms have a few options in the AI era. You can run toward AI, which is to say you can future-proof your newsroom. You can try to get cited in AI answers. You can use AI as part of your workflow. You can run away from AI, which is to say, we're going to talk about this too, is like you can be out in your community hosting events, making sure you're human, you have a very human forward strategy in your newsroom. Or you can do both things, but you can't do nothing. I'm sure you've been well introduced to the idea that this is a big upheaval and the time to take action is now. But the good news for today's discussion and the things that we're going to focus on for today is that for these, running away and running toward AI, they strategies can often overlap, and you can do both at the same time. So that's really what we're going to focus on, is that, there's a lot of concern about, Google Zero and the decline of traditional search traffic. And that begs the question of optimizing for AEO, or, answer engine optimization, getting cited in AI answers. And one thing that we found is that a lot of those strategies intersect well with other strategies that we think are going to help local newsrooms build resilience in the AI era, whether you have a full AI strategy or you're still figuring it out. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And these are the four. The next slide has the outline of how we're going to do that. So I want to give you, we're going to do a quick overview of the AI-mediated landscape. I know you've probably heard a lot about this already, and some of these numbers will be familiar to you, but we're just going to ground it there. And then we're going to talk about highlighting your newsroom's expertise, what types of stories you can really focus on, and maybe some things you could stop doing, and then building trust and visibility beyond your news website. So we'll start with the overview. First is I know, like I said, there's a lot out there about this. I'm sure you're well acquainted perhaps with the bad news, or some people would see it as bad news. And just, for today's discussion, one of the things that is we're seeing declining search traffic or traditional search, and people are a lot less likely to click through to a chatbot answer than they are to a traditional search when it comes to getting news. So people are less likely to do this. This is the latest data from the Reuters Institute. And this is hitting, next slide, it's hitting publishers, small publishers particularly hard. Axios published a story in March with data from Chartbeat from January 2024 to 2026, showing that traffic to small publishers is down 60% in that time period from traditional search. And we've now officially seen that bot traffic has overtaken human traffic online, at least according to Cloudflare, which is a very popular security and internet infrastructure. The CEO originally predicted that this would happen in 2027. It's now happened in 2026. And there's another study that found that there was a 45% AI agent traffic increased 45%, even just from Q1 2026 to Q2 2026. So this bot traffic is most of the traffic online, and it's growing. But we don't see all doom and gloom here for news publishers. There are some upsides here. Next slide. So one of my favorite quotes, and something we're thinking about a lot here at IndieGraph, is from Eli Pariser, who's author of The Filter Bubble, which talks about the effects of algorithms on our lives and society. And he's done a deep dive on, AI-mediated landscape, and he says that the attention economy is being supplanted by the trust economy. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Next slide. So the attention economy rewarded or encouraged things like scale, traditional SEO, and I've put here like service journalism in quotes because I will dive into that a lot more, and I really actually love the idea of service journalism. But just the classic example is, what time is the Super Bowl? But it can also get a lot more useful and helpful. I actually talked about this in one of my classes last semester, and I gave an example of actually a Cal Matters piece that was more about how to take advantage of social services and stuff. So it runs the gamut. Some of it journalists love, some of it they don't. But those types of pieces were intended for a lot of questions people are asking, and they provided a service that at the time news organizations were really well positioned to provide. Meanwhile, the trust economy encourages things like your deep expertise, human relationships or direct relationships with your audience, and more sense making and taste making. So our thesis at IndieGraph is that the trust economy has better incentives that are more closely aligned with journalists' interests, mission, and values. So next slide. And in fact, we have some early indications that as people's concern about AI slop and misinformation goes up, the economic value of your trusted news brand increases. So you'll see a lot of Reuters Institute data in this report. I love them as a source. They do a lot of great work. So they found that only 20% of people trust news from AI chatbots. And meanwhile, there's another study done that found that when they exposed people, these people were existing news subscribers, but when they exposed people to AI misinformation, or made them concerned about that, they found that those subscribers were less likely to cancel their subscription, and they were spending more time on the website, which not only reduced churn, but also gives the opportunity to sell more ads and earn more revenue off these subscribers. So there's some emerging evidence that the value of your trusted news brand is actually going to go up. And that's a lot of what we're going to focus on today. So just to summarize some of this, what does it mean? You have to consider that, your first reader might be a bot, or just, I think a theme you'll pick up on today as we go through the slides is that sometimes there's an additional layer to break through. There's a new kind of AI layer to break through with your content and for your discoverability. So just keep that in mind. But the good news, again, like I said, is that it's not just people looking for trusted information. It's also, to an extent, the LLMs, the chatbots, big tech, however you want to put it, are going to be looking for trusted information. Media Copilot wrote about this a few weeks back, I believe. The author was talking about how if, for example, Google starts selling ads against AI overviews, you're going to want to make that information in the overview really trusted in order to get someone to take action. There's opportunity there for news organizations, as he pointed out. And just this week, I was reading a piece from Press Gazette where they found that if an AI chatbot cites piece of information and the news organization, that the trust in the chatbot is correlated with the trust in the news organization. So don't undervalue yourself in terms of the information you're providing in this landscape, and keep in mind that there's value not just for your human audience, but also for the makers of these LLMs. And don't be afraid to lean into your humanity and what you do really well. You'll see that I think that there's also going to be a demand for more kind of in-person touch points as we continually are trying to navigate this AI-mediated landscape. And so the humans in your newsroom, your expertise, that's something that you should really emphasize going forward. If you're not, I'm sure you already are, but you could do it even more. So Again, the way we sum this up at IndieGraph is that we want to see local newsrooms building context, connection, and community. And each of the strategies we're going to touch on today, covers one of these points. And so we're going to go ahead and start with building connection. And that is, centered around highlighting, again, the people in your newsroom and their expertise. So I'd love to see you share just in the chat quickly. If you had to sum up in one sentence, what is your newsroom's expertise? Okay, politics. Thank you, Natalie. Anyone else? Relocation, local news, solutions journalism, love it. Ethnic local paper, okay, any community's interest, natural world, local news, biopharmaceuticals, awesome. Thank you. You can go ahead to the next slide, Erica. Oh, yeah. So, sorry, there's more coming in, sorry. The local region. Awesome. Well, look, and this you don't have to put in the chat, but I just want you to think about, and maybe this can have several solutions to it, and maybe you've already accomplished all these solutions, and if so, that's amazing. But if I'm new to your website, if I'm coming to your website for the first time, how would I know about what your expertise is, and how would you build credibility around that I should be, trusting you? And again, don't have to answer right now. Just want you to think about it, and we're going to talk about one way to do that. Next slide is to really delve into this. Oh, sorry, I just used an AI word, delve, but I'm a real human. Hi. It's creeping into our language. I see it all the time now. Is to level up your staff bio, really go deep with your staff bio. And I'll be talking about not only how you can do this, but how you can get this out there and use it in multiple ways. But the reason for this is that it really allows, it allows both people and bots to get to know you and your work. It builds credibility, and this expertise is an important AEO signal. So next slide. So there's like 3 points, I think, if they're not already in your bio, I recommend getting in there, and it's okay to make them pretty long. So the first one is expertise. This is, like I said, especially good for AEO, but it can help build credibility with your human audience. So one thing I love, I'm using all the examples here from around the IndieGraph network, and this is the Harvey World Herald. Nicole here lists all of the degrees she has, which is a really obvious way to build, to talk about your expertise and build that credibility. I think you can do it several ways, though. I think you can do it if you don't have as many degrees as Nicole. It might just be that your beat or impact your journalism has had, years on your beat, experience reporting on the topic. There's several ways you can do this, but I recommend, not being shy, basically bragging about your accomplishments and your expertise in your bio. Next, okay, yeah. And then one thing, so again, the reason for this is that this will be familiar. The experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness will be familiar to anyone who's, been down the road of SEO. But Google is still evaluating this, and a lot of these are hit on by just, again, emphasizing your expertise in your bio. So it's still an important signal as we transition from, SEO to AEO, if you will. And do make sure also, if you can, you're adding hyperlinks and credentials, hyperlinks to your credentials if possible, or your previous work. Just that cross-linking is really important. And then one thing I love, an example I have here is from the New York Times. And one thing if you're familiar with kind of some of the things they've done recently, they've done a big, I think maybe, I don't know, within the past couple of years, I want to say, they did a big initiative where they really expanded their reporter bios. And so anything, you can see here, those are all those names in the byline are hyperlinked. You can link out to their bios, but they also do this summary paragraph at the start of stories where they talk about, the relevant expertise of the reporter or reporters on the story. And I think it's a great thing to do. I love to see it. And I will say, like, I'm a longtime journalist. I'm a journalism professor. I'm not disinclined to, I'm not disinclined to trust the New York Times. That's right. Yes. I trust the New York Times. I'm a journalist. I trust journalists. I'm not skeptical generally of a high quality news organization like the New York Times. But I even find myself like looking for these often, even though they don't need to earn my trust. So I've come to really enjoy this feature. I love how they do it. And I think, again, it's a great signal to your audience about, not just trust us, I'm a journalist, trust me, I'm a journalist, but why they should trust you on a particular story. Talk about your relevant expertise where possible. So the second thing I'd love to see in your bio, is more about your mission, about the why behind your work. Again, it's going to help build trust with your human audience. And we'll talk about why it might be important to do so for the bot landscape as well. But excuse me, sorry. This one in particular from Annalise Pierce at Shasta Scout. I really truly remember the first time I went to her bio and I read this paragraph and I was like, wow, okay, this really gives me a sense of who she is, why she's doing this work. I just think this is such a great example. I'd love to see you share more about your mission and the why behind your work in your bio. And the reason for this is not just my preference. Next slide. There's some evidence that, again, when people know that journalists in their community, share their values, that it does actually increase trust in the organization. So this is from research where they had workshops with news consumers in 4 cities and found some themes that could strengthen or weaken trust. And one of them was mission and a shared mission with the community. So highlighting this and telling your own story is important. And again, it's important for the humans, but it's also important to an extent for the bots. You might have seen, next slide. You might have seen this story, for example, from a BBC reporter who became, the champion hot dog eating tech journalist because he said so, right? And bots were saying that he was, had this credential. So, which is not, it's an important lesson in that if you're not telling your story, somebody else can fill in the gaps. Maybe something that's being said on Reddit, which is a big source for LLMs, about you is going to fill in the gaps if somebody asks about you or your organization. So, be out there on the record as detailed as possible about who you are and why you do your work. And then another important thing here that I'm going to emphasize for bios is just being human, showing you're human. Again, you are putting a lot of effort into the work that you do as a journalist, and people should know that, there's real human behind their work, and it's great if they just kind of can know a little bit about you to build that connection. So this example is from Chris Campbell at The Ridge. He does, just a little paragraph about his interests, how he spends his time, and also photos. Photos are going to be, I want to see photos on all of your bios. And if you even saw this example from the New York Times, they have, photos in the byline as well. Again, showcasing that there's humans behind this work. So I have a screenshot here. If you're an IndieGraph publisher, you would update your bio by going to users and then profile, and that's where you can add a photo and enhance your bio. You can see that you can hyperlink from it, which I do recommend. So that's an option for IndieGraph publishers, but for everybody, linked, don't just update the bio page and then just leave it. I've been talking about linking out and cross-linking, link to it wherever possible and think of it as evergreen content for social media. Do a get to know our staff or something like that. You can do cards on Instagram, share your bios, share links to your bios. Just don't be afraid to put the humans forward who do your work. I talked about mission, but you can add a little paragraph or sentence about your mission within your bio. But if you want to go even further, Trusting News has a whole trust kit about reporter mission statements. And they break down, again, more of the research behind this and how to go ahead and do a full mission statement, which is going even further into that. And then honestly, if you take like just one thing away from today's webinar, that would make me happy. I really want to emphasize, with all of this advice, perfect's the enemy of good, and just start somewhere. So I don't want you to look at this and think, oh, I have to do this, this, and this in order to update my bio. Just add one sentence today, just about your mission, a heartfelt statement about your mission or something. Just start and just update it and start somewhere. All right, so we're moving on to one of the other pillars of IndieGraph strategy, which is context. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about what kind of stories to spend your time on and what you can spend maybe some less time on. So I love this from this chart from the Reuters Institute again. It kind of sums up a lot of what I'm going to say. So maybe you just screenshot this and, go get a coffee or something. But they interviewed about, I think it was 250 for their 2026 digital trends report. They interviewed, I think, 250 digital news leaders across the globe and asked them what they're going to be focusing on in 2026. And you can see here, top of the list is original investigations, contextual analysis, community building, and at the bottom of the list is service journalism, which I touched on earlier. And the reason for this, I think, is largely because, as we all kind of know, AI does a pretty good job of, we can move to the next slide. AI does a pretty good job of summarizing sources already available on the internet. This screenshot is from NPR when they talked about, publishers and the fear of Google Zero. And so I think anytime you are assigning a story, starting reporting on a story, really ask yourself, like, am I summarizing information that people could get elsewhere or that chatbots could easily quickly research for somebody, pull together some sources and give a coherent answer. If you're not adding anything really unique to your organization, I'm not saying definitely don't do the story. I'm just saying, really think about that. Really think about how you want to invest your time. Also think about how, we talked about what are you known for? What's your newsroom's expertise? How is this really helping you build that expertise or build a trusted brand? And also, will this story not just help me get clicks? Again, that's like the scale economy, clicks, bringing in traffic, that was great. But in the trust economy, are you building your audience in the community where you want to build this audience? And that can be, you can define that geographically, you can define it by topic, but is this story really going to bring somebody in who will ultimately, subscribe, donate, whatever it may be, because we're going to provide an ongoing service to them. So if you are trying to get cited in AI answers, there's, some bad news about this that we covered, but the good news is that if you do get a click through, people are, just, again, evidence showing that they're more likely to convert. So they're more engaged once they do get to your site, and they are also going to spend, you can go to the next slide, more time on site. So 68% more time on site from visitors from AI engines than from traditional search. So if you are getting people with getting them to your site, they're more likely to stay engaged. So there's some good news there. And where you're going to see this theme come up again and again, as as this is a quote from an FT Strategies report, that we evolve from search engines to answer engines. People are going to be seeking more depth and verification and analysis. So instead of just answering a question, back to my main pillar point, give context, give the why. That really is unique to you, or that, again, you've built that credibility toward that people really want to listen to what you have to say, or chatbots trust what you have to say. And just keep in mind too that, we're not just talking about you and your relationship necessarily with big tech and your AEO strategy, but we're talking about what people out there are doing with AI too to get information and discover news content. And so one example is that I'm going to share a quote in the next slide from a piece I read about building an AI agents to read newsletters. And so I've actually built one to read my AI newsletters. I have an agent read my newsletters and send me a summary and link out. But one of the things that came up in this piece is talking about really to break through to break through a summary like that and still reach the human on the other end reading that digest or whatever. You have to have original analysis, distinct perspective, a voice. You can't just have a link, a list of links, because AI can do that. Again, AI can aggregate that information pretty well. You have to do something additional to stand out. And if you become a destination, if your newsletter does have a great, narrative driven approach or something like that, and you surprise and delight your readers, then they can become a destination. And maybe you're bypassing that AI aggregation altogether. So it is an important thing to focus on. So I guess, to my point that I just made, focus on your newsletter strategy. You'll hear a lot. You've been hearing a lot about newsletters for many years. It's not like this is particularly new information, but you're still hearing about it, right? A newsletter strategy is an important way to have a more direct way with your audience. And it's a way to lean into this personal human strategy that we talked about with the bios too. You can have the newsletter be from someone in your newsroom, not just from your newsroom's brand, for example. You can, I've been digging into a lot of local newsletters lately. A lot of them are signed by somebody in the newsroom. They have a photo of somebody, of the person authoring it. I love all of that stuff. This top example here is from another IndieGraph publisher, the Weston Observer, and the managing editor, Melissa Russell. She starts every newsletter, with, just a friendly conversational narrative. She does link out to stories, but I'm there more for reading what's in the newsletter than necessarily for the link outs. And then the bottom example is from the Palm Springs Post. They're another IndieGraph publisher. If you know about them, you know that they're a very AI-forward newsroom that uses AI-assisted reporting to publish, but they also make time to write these really personal, they write personal intros in their newsletter, and then they do this at the bottom of every newsletter where they're Kendall and Mark are the two editors, and they talk about, they just give these little personal anecdotes about themselves at the end of every newsletter, and I love that. I love that they take the time to do that. So the quotes sum this up, the rest, sum this up pretty well, but, really leaning into original reporting. I know this is part of the DNA of newsrooms, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but hopefully I've emphasized how much that information they can't get anywhere else is going to be really helpful to either drive traffic, well, again, maybe less traffic, but build trust and credibility and break through when AI answers, at least get cited and at least be discoverable. But also, breaking through to your human audience. And then can we go back to the other slide? I'll get to AI literacy content in a second. Sorry. And then I think I said before, provide context. Don't just tell me what happened. Tell me more of the why. So leaning into analysis and sense making and taste making. Don't just tell me a restaurant opened in your community. Tell me whether it's good, whether I should go. Tell me some of the story behind it, or an example that I saw in the IndieGraph network recently is just, and they did this all content in the newsletter is, a Costco opened up, but what does that mean for traffic? What does that mean for local traffic? And they broke down the data and they had quotes from people. And it was a great way to say, not just, Costco's opening up, but what is this really going to mean? Again, making sense of my community. And then the final piece here is AI literacy content. It's new recent research from Trusting News. We could go to the next slide. Found that AI literacy, they found that 48% of people who saw just one piece of AI literacy content from a news organization became somewhat or much more trusting of the organization after viewing it. And 47% said they'd come back for more content on AI. And this includes people who had low trust in news to begin with. So helping just like we're all trying to navigate this kind of new world we're living in, so is your audience, and helping them do that can build loyalty and trust. All right, and finally, building community. So this is a lot of things. We've talked about what you're doing on your website. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about what you can do off your website. So, investing in being present across platforms helps with a couple of things that are important. One is that, again, if we can't rely as much on traditional search for traffic and discovery, then we're going to have to figure out something else, right? So, that's, I guess, a given, but it's not. It's actually also good AEO signal is to have your reporters, your experts out there across multiple platforms. That again signals, oh, this person's really an expert. This is somebody I should cite. And it's another way to, again, build your expertise and get discovered by your human audience. Say you're going on a podcast or something, right? And they hear you being cited as an expert. That's a great way to build credibility and get discovered. And I know that video is a big thing to bite off, but consider that you can also earn revenue on these other platforms like YouTube. You can sell ads. And then in-person events, for example, which I think I'm kind of bullish on right now, you can charge for those. And there are local nonprofit newsrooms already turning a profit on some of those events. So that's another great option. Not necessarily going to help you with AEO. That's maybe one that doesn't cross over here, but it is another possible revenue stream. And then at the same time, this can help you earn trust. So it can being a person being present across platforms, again, showing your humanity, showing that there are credible people behind your work, can help people trust you and know that you're human as there's increased AI misinformation and AI slop. And we talked about a bit earlier about showing you share your community values can help build trust. And so, being physically present at a community event can help reinforce that message. And, I've talked about what we can control as journalists and what we can't. And again, your human audience can deploy an agent to read their emails, and we may not like it. And in fact, none of my students seem to like getting news on social media, but they do anyway. And that's, again, recent data from the Reuters Institute showing that, getting news from social is up while getting news from news websites and apps is down. So people are there and you should be there too, which is Old. I feel like I used to be a social media editor. I've been saying this for over more than 10 years now, but I guess it's still true. So I have some quick ideas and then I want to hear from you. So, how can you do this? I mean, there's all the obvious things like post your links on social, right? But some other ways to do it are to host a Reddit AMA. And in fact, there was just a story out from the Medill Local News Initiative, either this week or last week. I guess it was earlier this week. Talking about local news and how Reddit is actually driving traffic and Reddit has publisher tools. So that's something to look into. I've already kind of touched on going on a podcast. If you have the resources to invest in something like YouTube, I think that's a great option. But honestly, truly, I want to hear from you. What either I'd love for people to write in the chat again if you have something that you've done, on off platform, or sorry, on other platforms besides your website, or if there's something that you been wanting to try but haven't tried it yet. I just love to hear what your ideas are. Anyone? Oh, yay. We have a podcast and we'll do expos soon. I assume that means live events. That's awesome. I've been seeing some, yes, podcasts. I love it. I listen to the Times Union is a newspaper up in I think near Albany in upstate New York. I live in California for the record. And I've listened to more than one of their podcasts. It's such a great way to build an additional audience. Hope to have a creative and manageable strategy to tell stories for each platform we use. Awesome. Oh, okay. MSN Partner Hub. That's awesome. Oh, pop-up newsrooms. Yes. I would love to hear more about how that works out. Amazing. Yeah. Oh, went on a podcast. Oh, awesome. Okay, and then so there's a question. What about live video on Instagram and Instagram in general? Is it worth investing time for reader growth? So Melissa's question, I'll just go ahead and touch on this really quickly in the chat. I don't know about live in particular, but one thing I will say is that if you've seen again, by the way, I used to work for the LA Times and I don't like the New York Times did it, so everyone should do it kind of thing. But so sorry to use this example again, but I think you can do things whether the New York Times has tried it or not, just to be clear. But they are doing more vertical videos with the reporters kind of breaking down stories. And I think that is partly motivated by some of the things we're talking about today to show there's real humans and to show, there's people behind their work and breaking it down. So I think they do it on Instagram. I usually see it in their app or whatever. But if you can do something that's quick, you can just have a reporter. It doesn't have to be fancy. If you've seen the New York Times videos, they're probably more produced than you even need to do. They're just kind of somebody sitting there and talking about the reporting. I think that is something that you could find a way to make that not a huge time investment. And yes, I would say it's worth a try. There's a lot of good questions here about partner hubs and pop-ups. Yes, okay, good. You guys are chatting and answering them. Okay, good. Because I actually don't have a ton of info on partner hubs, so I love that, Andrew, you're adding the context. So thank you so much. Keep the conversation going. I love these ideas. I'm going to jump into a couple, just again, these are not going to be a surprise based on what I've already said, but just to drive home some of the things I've said today, you can go to the next slide. I've probably made this pretty clear, but look, think of your bios, these bios that you've invested in, think of them as content, schedule them on social, make cards, that introduce your staff, cross-link to them wherever possible, link out from them. Just think about, how you can get your people in front of people more. Maybe like I was just talking about the videos that New York Times does. Put something like that on Instagram. That's not exactly your bio page, but you get the idea. Like think of these as content, not just something that sits in your website. And then also, I've made it clear that I think the newsletter is a great place to invest and spend your time. It's a more direct relationship with your audience. You have their contact information. You can do all kinds of things with campaigns to re-engage them. And Indie Email, for example, allows you to segment your audience and do follow up with them and do all kinds of things. So that's a great thing to invest in if you can get people on your newsletter in the first place. One way you can do that is by adding these, forms within your story, and really recommend that, if you are able to see, you are generating traffic from AI citations. Just going back to some of the data we looked at earlier, there's indication that people who are getting to you through that are already pretty engaged and they're more likely to stick around. So really try to, if you know which stories people are coming to through AEO, essentially, make sure your newsletter CTAs are on those pages. And then again, I really think that, and I should say, this is somewhat just anecdotal in my opinion, but it's something I see in my students, and again, the evidence is, there's evidence out there that people don't particularly trust chatbots, or they're not thrilled with the way that the landscape is going. And I think there's going to be an increased demand for, bringing back the third place, if you're familiar with that concept of like people finding a place to meet in person, community events. And I think local newsrooms are really well positioned to provide this. And like I said, even at, I think INN Days, there was a discussion about this. Neiman Lab wrote about it, and some newsrooms, nonprofit newsrooms, are already turning a profit on this. So I think local newsrooms are really well positioned to give people the opportunity to meet face to face, whether it's something like a trivia night that's information driven, or whether it's just showing up and being present in your community. There's another RJI has a whole kind of kit to help you produce a walking tour in your neighborhood or in your community. So there's all types of ways for newsrooms to use their connections, their audience, and their information to get people together as they are, craving these experiences more. And I would love to see more of this work. So yeah, thank you. Sorry, I've lost a little bit of the thread on the chat, but I see that it's very active, and I love that you all are, sharing resources and supporting each other. So I'm happy to answer more questions. Also love to see what you've already got going on in the chat. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Laura, we have a question that came in through the Q&A box. I can read it to you if you can't see it, but Chad was asking, strategically, should nonprofit media orgs be standing up to quote unquote bot sites to run in parallel to their human pointed sites? If so, are there any best practices nonprofit publishers should be implementing?
Oh, bot sites, like for bots, like more machine readable sites? Is that the question?
I will paste it in the chat if you can see it, but also Chad, you are also welcome to elaborate.
Yeah, okay. This is a great question, Chad. Thank you for asking. Should they be running parallel? I don't know. I'm going to say that if that's the strategy you want to invest in, yes and yes. Yeah, that would just be optimized for bots. Again, yeah, so yes, there are, like, if that's what you want to do, then yes, you should be doing it. And I think that increasingly we're going to see more news organizations doing this. There are opportunities for things like, if you have a more machine readable news site, that's going to make it easier for you to monetize that data, right? For LLM, citation, training, whatever it is. So it is, if that's a strategy you want to invest in, then absolutely. I've seen things like even one example that I've seen that I would, you can think about is in the footer of a website, their kind of about page and stuff has, like more machine friendly version of it. That again, we talked about, telling your story and not letting, people on Reddit talking about you, filling in the gaps there for AI reading. So you can do that. But you can also, there are some formats if you're not ready to invest in, say, like, oh, I'm going to have just a machine readable about page versus my human about page. One way to solve for both at the same time is doing like a Q&A format. Because, one of the reasons that Reddit is, for example, is such a popular source of AI training data, which part of it is that they've done deals with AI companies, but also because the Q&A format is kind of it's human readable, but it's also more machine friendly, if you will. So one way to think about, there's like a long-term strategy you're talking about, Chad, that like requires a bit of investment, but one way to think about it maybe in the short term that can touch both of your bases is to do some formatting, some content that's in a Q&A form, because that's going to translate to being machine readable more easily.
Great. Thanks, Laura. I don't see any more questions coming through the Q&A, but if there's any other last minute questions in the chat, please feel free to share. We still have a few more minutes left. But otherwise, thank you so much for spending this session with us. So keep an eye out for our email, which will contain the recording as well as the slides in the email that you use to register for the webinar. Yes, this is recorded and will be sent out. And don't forget to check out our Tech for Journalism program if you are interested in learning more about the eligibility and criterias and to apply. And as well, please visit our website to learn more about Anygraph OS. But thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, Laura, so much for being our speaker today.